Everyone imagines Persian banquets. They're missing the real story. When we picture ancient Persia, our minds often conjure images of opulent feasts. Kings reclining on silken cushions, golden goblets brimming, and tables groaning under the weight of exotic meats and sweet delicacies. It's a grand, almost mythical scene, isn't it? But for the vast majority of people who built and sustained that immense empire, daily life, and especially daily food, was a world away from such luxury. Today, we're stepping beyond the palace walls. We're going to explore the surprising, often humble diet that fueled the common people of ancient Persia. What did the farmer eat after a long day in the fields? What sustained the artisan in the bustling market? The answers might just surprise you, painting a much more grounded and human picture of one of history's greatest civilizations. At the very heart of the Persian diet for almost everyone was grain. Wheat and barley were the undisputed staples. They were ground into flour, a labor-intensive process, and then used to make flatbreads. Think of it as the daily bread, literally the foundation of every meal, much like rice in parts of Asia or potatoes in Europe later would be. These flatbreads weren't just a side dish. They were often the plate itself, the utensil, and the main source of calories. They were durable, easy to transport, and incredibly versatile. A traveler might carry a stack in a simple cloth, knowing it would keep them fed on long journeys across the empire's vast territories. Beyond grains, legumes played a crucial role. Lentils, chickpeas, and various beans provided essential protein and fiber. These were often simmered into thick stews, seasoned with local herbs, and served alongside those ubiquitous flatbreads. It was a hearty, filling meal, perfectly suited for a day of hard physical labor. Vegetables were also an important part of the common diet, though perhaps not as diverse as we might imagine today. Onions, garlic, leeks, and various leafy greens were widely cultivated. They added flavor and vital nutrients to the stews and were often eaten raw, picked fresh from small household gardens. Fruits, when in season, offered a welcome sweetness. Figs, dates, pomegranates, and grapes were all common. Dates, in particular, were a powerhouse of energy and could be dried and stored for months, making them a crucial food source during leaner times or long journeys. They were nature's energy bar. Dairy products provided another layer of sustenance. Milk, primarily from sheep and goats, was consumed, but more commonly it was processed into yogurt, cheese, and a fermented drink called doogh or ayran. These not only preserved the milk but also offered beneficial probiotics, much like today. Meat, however, was a rarer commodity for the average Persian. While the wealthy feasted on roasted lambs and poultry, the common person might only eat meat on special occasions, perhaps a religious festival or a family gathering. When consumed, it was often goat or mutton, usually boiled into a stew to maximize its flavor and extend its use. Fish was also consumed, especially in regions near rivers or the Persian Gulf. It provided another source of protein, often dried or salted for preservation. But for those living inland far from major water sources, fish would have been an even rarer treat. So what about those luxurious spices we associate with Persia? For the common folk, simple seasonings were the norm. Salt was vital, of course, along with locally grown herbs like mint, dill, and coriander. Saffron, the red gold, was certainly used, but sparingly, mostly by the wealthy or for specific medicinal purposes. Water was the primary beverage, often stored in large clay jars to keep it cool. Wine was also produced and consumed, particularly by the wealthier classes, but for the common person, it was likely reserved for celebrations, much like meat. A simple, practical approach to hydration. The daily routine would begin early, often before dawn. A typical breakfast might consist of flatbread dipped in doogh or a handful of dates and figs. A quick, energy-rich start to a demanding day in the fields or workshops. Midday, a simple meal might be brought to the workers. More flatbread, perhaps some cheese or a handful of olives if available. It was about practicality, about fueling the body efficiently to continue the day's tasks. No long, leisurely lunches here. The main meal of the day typically came in the evening, after the day's work was done. This would be the time for the thick lentil or bean stew, often made with whatever vegetables were in season, served generously with flatbread. It was a communal affair, a time for families to gather. Food preparation was, by necessity, a family affair. Women played a central role, from grinding grains to baking bread and simmering stews. It was a constant, daily effort, crucial for the survival and well-being of the household. Each meal was a testament to their labor. Storage was another challenge. Without refrigeration, drying, salting, and fermenting were essential techniques. Grains were stored in large clay granaries, fruits were dried, and dairy was turned into longer-lasting products. This foresight was critical to survive lean seasons. The rhythm of their diet was deeply tied to the seasons. Spring brought fresh greens and young vegetables, summer offered abundant fruits, and autumn was harvest time for grains and legumes. Winter, then, relied heavily on dried and preserved foods, a lean but resilient period. Famine, though not a constant, was a very real threat. Crop failures, droughts, or conflict could quickly plunge communities into hardship. The simple, resilient diet of grains and legumes was designed to minimize this risk, to provide consistent calories even under difficult circumstances. Even for soldiers, the diet largely mirrored that of the common people. Rations would consist primarily of flatbread, dried fruits, and perhaps some dried meat or cheese if available. It was a practical, portable diet, designed for endurance and efficiency on long campaigns. So while the kings dined on elaborate fare, the strength of the Persian Empire was truly built on humble ingredients. The tireless work of farmers, the resilience of grains, and the simple, nourishing meals prepared by families. It was a diet of necessity, yes, but also one of ingenuity and deep connection to the land. This understanding shifts our perspective, doesn't it? It moves us beyond the glittering myths to the grounded reality of everyday lives. It reminds us that behind every grand empire, there were millions of ordinary people, sustained by simple, vital foods, working to build something extraordinary. The daily diet of common Persians wasn't about indulgence. It was about survival, community, and the quiet, persistent rhythm of life. It was a diet that fueled an empire, one flatbread and one lentil stew at a time. If you're curious about the hidden daily lives that built ancient civilizations, join our journey into more forgotten histories.